Hello. I also have to say that they dug up my Twitter handle, which is like completely unused. So if you like tweet at me and I don't respond, that's why. Please use this totally real email address that I have up here, like if you want to send me anything. So I'm really happy to be here to give a talk that I gave internally at 2 Sigma around technical leadership. And I want to give a few disclaimers about this. And the first is that this is literally my thoughts. They're not anything of the thoughts of my employer. They're a financial sciences company. This is neither finance nor science. And I do need to give a little bit of background on the talk to explain like how it came into existence and the message that I was trying to send. The first part is the 3 M's, where I'm going to go through management versus leadership. And then I'm going to talk about some essential abstract skills that I think our technical leaders really need to have today. And the entire thing is done in sort of a tongue-in-cheek fashion because I was trying to act as a court jester within my organization to try and talk about some of the challenges that we were facing. About me, maybe you shouldn't listen to me. I'm basically a feral engineer. I got a PhD in computer science, and I went to work for a company in New York because I really like New York City. And in my time at 2 Sigma, I never really had a real line manager. I worked either directly for an organization or a manager of managers, and I was like that one IC working for them, or I had a line manager, but my day-to-day was entirely handled by another tech lead, so I didn't really have a lot of insight into what sort of cookie-cutter stuff looked like. And when I worked in an industry as a grad student, I was working in a research lab. I was like trying to figure out how to publish papers, not how to build better software development experience. At 2 Sigma, I've been extremely lucky. I got put on a project that ran for about 6 years and was really well suited to my interests. It really scaled up. It really helped me grow my career. That's great. I had great managers and great support. So why am I here giving this talk? Well, a long time ago, my boss's boss was Camille Fournier. She's a very famous author of a book called The Manager's Path. And because she wrote this very popular book called The Manager's Path, engineering leadership at 2 Sigma said, hey, why don't you tell us how to do the IC path? And she came into the internal channel for our team and said, hey, please give me help with this. They're asking me to do this. I've thought about manager's path. I need your input on the IC path. And I had been sitting on a bunch of these, sort of internal, how do we develop these stronger skills among engineers, engineering committees. And I took all the ideas and I sort of said, okay, let me take this and give you a presentation of everything that I think is wrong that we're doing at 2 Sigma. And when I usually give this presentation, when I get this presentation internally, I'd include this whole thing, but it's all very company specific. It is talking about things here. But what I want to state is that there's this real challenge in senior engineering that we face that comes from this dichotomy between what junior engineers expect and what actually happens as you grow on the IC track. When you're a junior engineer, you're put into this world, you're focused on this highly technical discipline of software engineering. You're focused on learning these new skills that you didn't learn in school, like how do I actually deploy changes? How do I focus on this very hard technical problem? And this can kind of lead to you imagining just becoming a super coder. You're in charge of doing this total rewrite of the system all by yourself, and you're just off in isolation because a lot of times we ask our junior engineers to work in isolation, to work in depth in order to build things. What actually happens is senior ICs end up providing leverage. They make architectural decisions and provide feedback on those. They talk with internal customers and sometimes external customers. They get buy-in from different stakeholders. And maybe if they're really lucky, these senior engineers will get to write some of the least time-critical features. So I shared this talk internally, and it got some, positive feedback. But the main takeaway that I got is that I hadn't been constructive. I just sort of said, here's what's wrong. And they said, Josh, you've got to have ideas for, something that's better. Can you please be a little prescriptive about that? And that's where comes into play. And to start, I want to go through the 3 M's. And this is talking about the distinction between management and leadership. And I'm going to state that I don't think that leaders at any company can escape any or all kinds of management. The only thing that they can potentially escape is people management. So what kinds of management make up leadership? I'm going to go through 3 kinds: team management, execution management, and people management. So for team management, I'm going to take us to Season 2, Episode 13 of the television show Ugly Americans. If you have not seen this show, I am not encouraging you to go watch it. This episode, however, has stuck in my brain since I saw it for the first time about 8 years ago. Since it's not a very widely seen show, I'll give you the basic premise. It takes place in an alternate reality New York City called New New York. Inside of New New York, there's a wide variety of aliens, monsters, demons that all need to cohabitate in the city, and they need to blend their different cultures and different behaviors. This is all taken care of in the Department of Integration, which is the company that our protagonist, Mark Lilly, works for. Mark Lilly is a frontline social worker inside of the Department of Integration. That is, he's a very technical worker overseeing the day-to-day operations of, this important business. The premise of this episode is that Mark is really disappointed in his boss. There's a roast of his boss, and he calls his boss dumb, worthless, I could do your job, and the boss gets really sad, and in a trope turnaround, he says, Mark, you're going to be in charge of everything. So Mark takes over everything. He finds a lot of waste. There's millions of dollars being spent on this thing called the Department of Birthdays. The boss is having 8 different lunches a day, and he's you only need 1 lunch a day. Why are you doing this? He, scraps the lunches. He cuts back on the Department of Birthdays, and the result is the near collapse of civilization. The reason for this is that the social cohesion of birthdays mattered. Having these lunches to build ties really mattered. And this is really what team management is all about. Now, as a senior IC, you're not accountable for team management. That's generally on the managers you work with. But you are surely a cornerstone of what it means to be a part of your team or part of your organization. And so that's a very serious thing that you need to consider as a leader in your company. Now, we also learned some other things from this episode. It has the single greatest example of delegation in television that I've ever seen. And it also has a completely original birthday jingle that they wrote, just because, you can't sing happy birthday on television. The second kind of management I want to talk about is execution management. And this is one that I don't think any IC, even if they don't become a leader, can escape. This is, how do I take a big piece of work and break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces of work and track it? You're going to have to do this. If you want to work as a software engineer and you want to have, a long time in the career, you're going to need to learn how to do these things. The most important thing to think about as a senior IC is your point of leverage in providing feedback. I think that you should always be providing feedback. Code reviews, document reviews, architecture reviews, helping people figure out how to present themselves better or be better, or just sort of encourage it. The steering of the ship, this kind of influence that you have, it doesn't just have to be making these top level decisions. It comes down to how can you push the day-to-day to be better. The last kind of management is what a lot of people think of when they just think of management, which is people management. How do I take, another person and become responsible for what they do at the company and how they develop in their career and all of these other things? And I think that people management and a lot of staff engineer descriptions are what makes individual contributor a little bit of a lie. I know that on some sort of descriptions for a staff level engineer, you see this may manage a small team. Not they will or you're expected to, but you might be expected to. And for a lot of people that are coming up in the IC world, for very good reasons, they say, I don't want to manage. And there then becomes this tension of you know what, you said that there's this technical track, you said that there's this IC track, but it's really the management track all along. And there's a lot of reasons that ICs can end up managing people. I personally think that it is a skill that is worth developing, even if you don't make it your whole career. One reason is that it's pretty hard to hire managers, and if you're like me, you'll someday be told hey, no one knows if they like managing until they try. Why don't you give this a shot? We have this 4-person team for you. And you go and try it, and you say oh, I don't actually like it that much. That's okay. The other thing is that your leadership on a team and stuff happens. Managers can leave or need to go on unexpected leave for family reasons. And since you're part of leadership, you're like a cornerstone of this organization, you might be expected, like reasonably, to take on some of that load. And having some experience with how to sort of play pinch hitter on managing is important. The third point is like interns. Like, we love interns at 2 Sigma. They're extremely talented. They're like almost scarily talented. And like, it's a great way to have like a 10 to 12 week opportunity to like see what it's like. And so then ICs learn to manage. And there's also some day-to-day projects or some very intense things that people are doing where it might make sense to have an IC effectively manage. So this is the 3 M's that we're going to use to talk about leadership. And now we should hear these like R's or this growling in the distance as we hear Career Doge growling the 5 R's that we're going to talk about, which are the skills, and I'm going to call these abstract skills that I think you need to master to become a senior IC or like a respected staff engineer. 5 R's are risk, reliability, reputation, relationships, and reducing complexity. I'm going to start with risk. This is a pattern that I've seen a lot. You have an engineer that complains and says, everything would just be better if only we did X. I mean, how many of you have heard someone like at your company say something like that? Okay. What I would say to them, and what I do say to people, is like, do it, right? Like, take some of your time and actually show me that you're right. Like, you're a smart person, I trust you, but I don't have as much information as you think you do. I don't have the data, like, please show me. And a lot of the pushback I've gotten internally is sort of this fallback to like, oh, I have like all these OKRs, like I can't even think about doing this, like why would you ask me to do something that's not expected of me? And like, this is like, my year-end perf has like expectations in it, and like I get, good employee points if I exceed expectations. And one of the best ways to exceed expectations is to do something that my boss like didn't expect me to do. So this is a great way to get like recognition for performance, is to find an opportunity to deliver value sort of outside of what anyone's thinking. And yeah, like, okay, maybe I can find a way to exceed expectations without like having to go off the beaten path, but like being irresponsible has its benefits. If you're looking to become a staff engineer, someone who has this like holy grail in their job description or expectations of setting their own priorities, like you really need to demonstrate that you can make bets with your time. You need to show that you can take this very expensive asset that is your attention at work and you can make good decisions with it. And the company's not going to like make that jump from like 0 to nothing. You need to do it gradually and demonstrate it over time. So here's a recipe for this. And this isn't necessarily directed at anyone in this room, but if you have like engineers that you're mentoring to try and become more senior, like I think that this is a reasonable thing to do. Find that thing that they really disagree on. Tell them to take 1 day to just like chunk it out, prove it. If they're really risk averse and your company has something like a hack day, like they can take that hack day to do it. That's like not really risking any of the other stuff, like the hack day set aside for this kind of stuff. But like really, like they should learn to like place the big bet with their time. If they're right, you can convince your team. If they're wrong, you should learn from it. It's like just like any other failure or incident we have at a company, we should take a moment to learn from it. Like we should be able to. And just start to repeat this. Like quarterly is a good way to start, but as you get more and more adept at it, you should find yourself taking more and more risks every day as you expand your scope and set your own priorities. The next R I want to talk about is reliability, or how Tim Gunn of Project Runway should live in your head. So Project Runway is a reality show basically about fashion designers trying to compete in contests to build sort of like wacky dresses. And Tim Gunn is one of the hosts. And I watched this show a lot in the mid-aughts when it was popular. And I don't like really remember anything about it. I can't tell you a single contest that was on the show, but I can tell you that Tim Gunn's voice of telling contestants to make it work lives in my head. Like, he would come in and he would see someone like struggling to staple 2 pieces of felt together to like get something done in 30 minutes and just like tears streaming down their eyes, and he would just say, make it work. And it's this like sort of just push to completion. And I'm really like frustrated by this because I never feel like I can explain this very well. I think that this like actually links into strategy in the first talk. Like, I want to be clear that making it work isn't like getting it right. It's not finishing everything that you set out to do. It's not doing everything you set out to do. It's about taking a step back and understanding the nuanced objective. Understand what we're really trying to do. Focusing on the O rather than the KR on what the company is trying to do. It also comes down to making sure that you're demonstrating that you're making it work through timely and incremental delivery of results. And it also corresponds to a willingness to adapt to changing in plans. Because plans change for a lot of reasons. Like, people might not know what they want. Partner teams might not know what they want. They might think they want X, but they really want Y. And, you need to change in response to that. And, like, again, this is something that I've never, like, I'm trying to express this on stage to 400 people, and, like, I've never felt, like, very satisfied about doing it. It's just taking yourself, like, back from the plans, back from these concrete things, and just really zeroing in on that direction you need to go, which is why I said the strategy talk, the very first one, which is very nice, is a good way to think about it. So how do you do that? I actually think hard deadlines are a great way to learn this. So hard deadlines are terrible. I had them in grad school where it was a very 0 or 1 experience. If I didn't submit my paper by like midnight on a Sunday, I would have to wait a year to submit my paper again. That's like a very high risk thing. And you find yourself in that last week becoming more and more savage about the trade-offs you're willing to make in order to deliver the paper. And I don't think that we should force artificial deadlines on people, but I think learning that kind of thinking is very important for staying strategic, even though you're making a lot of strategic directions there. And the last thing I want to say is, like, just don't obsess about missing. Like, you're going to make mistakes, learn from them. That's like part of the outcome is mistakes and what you learn from them. Okay, so the next 2 R's I want to talk about always make me feel a little bit sociopathic. Picture not related. And they're about reputation and relationships. And it can be really weird to take a step back and think about socially how we relate to one another. But I think it's important for staff engineers or senior engineers to really think about that when a lot of what we are trying to do is relate to one another. So reputation has a lot of different hierarchies. You personally have a reputation. Your team has a reputation. If you have a very large company where there are organizations that have multiple teams, that org has a reputation, and your company itself has a reputation. I'm not going to talk about company reputation because I'm standing on stage right now presenting to you probably the ugliest slides of this conference that are written in Comic Sans. But for your reputation, it comes down to how are you presenting yourself in person? Are you showing up on time to meetings? Are you paying attention? Are you coming back, like remembering what you're doing? Are you presenting yourself in writing? I really love the earlier talk that talked about building a culture of writing. I'll talk more about writing. I love writing. Everyone should do more writing. But you can really take this opportunity to think about your reputation through writing. Now, above that, there's team and org reputation. And here, I think there is a big shift for people. Instead of just thinking about how do I make myself look better, how do I improve my own reputation, you have to start avoiding things that I think are very natural to do, like blaming someone else if there's an incident, or trying to separate yourself from a problem that's somewhere else on the team, versus making sure to like take accountability or try and spread and be generous with praise and contributions. I think another thing to think about for team and org reputation is building connections. Like, no one is going to know that this engineer is like really great at debugging if you don't like connect them with someone who's like really needs that kind of skill. And a lot of this comes from just stopping thinking about yourself and starting to think about others. And Career Doge is getting pretty mad here because this sounds a lot like that team management stuff I was talking about earlier. And I'm like in here talking about skills for senior ICs, and I kind of think that the leadership skills are very aligned across both paths. The fourth R is relationships. Now, I'm going to say that networking isn't great. I think that actually networking events, like the ones that we're going to have later, are pretty good. So like external networking events have their benefits. But like internally, when you have a company, like it's not great to just like meet someone. You want to build a more substantial relationship. And I think a great way to do that is through what I'm going to call favor gifting. And favor gifting is where you take something that you know the other party might want and you give it to them. Very simple. It's something that makes us feel good. I think there's like some anthropological basis for it in terms of how like gift culture worked and various things, or at least that's what I remember from the first 5,000 years. And I think that there are some like great easy ways to do this, particularly if you're in a platform organization, which I am, where you support other engineers. The first way is just take ownership of your support rotation. Take ownership of the bugs, take ownership of the relationships, the customer interactions that you have, like really build those up. Think about like making these people trust you, because that's powerful. They'll come to you. They'll give you information that you wouldn't otherwise have that you can use for feedback, that you can use for leverage. As you get more senior, you can start to spend more of your risk budget that you're building by demonstrating you're making these good decisions on behalf of other teams, which is really on behalf of the organization as a whole. Ultimately, you can get to the point where you're actually like starting to make bets with your team's OKRs as gifts to other teams for better outcomes for the company. This is like really great in terms of sort of bringing everything together. Again, like the goal here isn't to like extract some kind of favor trading system. It's not about like getting work out of other people. This is really like still a little bit in reputation. How do you build stronger relationships within your company? The last R that I want to talk about is reducing complexity. And I think that this one is extremely important. If you think about early career, it can be very depth first. Even though we're getting people that are coming out of colleges with these degrees that are in computer science where they spent like 4 years really diving deep on things, we still toss them into the deep end of software engineering where they're learning about how to test, like how real systems work, observability, how do I debug, like all of these other things. That all of this other stuff I just talked about is really hard to ask them to learn. So they're really focused, they're really heads down on doing depth first stuff. And this image that I have is actually from a like sort of discussion of what it's like to do a PhD, where you sort of are pushing these boundaries of knowledge, and when you've been pushing these boundaries of knowledge for so long, your visibility just like becomes that edge. And I think that this is something that happens to senior engineers. They spent 2 to 4 years like really diving deep, really becoming masters of this like highly technical field. And now we ask them to come up for air and start thinking about other systems. And it becomes really terrifying. This is something that I've like talked with people internal to my company about. They say, I like don't want to think about this other system because it took me 4 years to learn this first system. Unfortunately, leadership is breadth first, or I should say strategic, because you really need to take this higher level view. You need to think about this like 15,000 foot view of what's going on. And there's a difference there. Like one, you need to develop the ability to take this strategic view. And the other is that you need to figure out how to communicate from down in the depths what's going on. And the skill for this is summarization. Summarization starts with an S that didn't fit with the R theme, so I went with reducing complexity. So how can we help our engineers learn to reduce complexity? One of the first things that I think of is elevator pitches. Like, can your team members like give an elevator pitch of what they're working on for this sprint or this quarter? Like, can they take that in 30 seconds, explain to someone like why this is valuable to the business? And if they can't, like, what's going on? And that might not just be like a problem with them, like that's a problem with like how we're communicating, like what's valuable and why we're doing it, which gets to engagement and all of these other things. I also think that we should have potential leaders write more with good feedback on style and on content. Writing is amazing. Writing is mind control. You take something, you put it into words, and then if you get someone else to read it, like that's their thoughts for the duration that they're reading it. That is very powerful. It's very durable because it's reusable. And I think it's a great way to like foster both better thinking and better communication. Finally, I think that there is a bit of sort of like flip side to summarization, which is kind of being able to predict what's in the depths. So encouraging people to take more sort of look at things that they are unfamiliar with, that they're seeing from a very high level, and kind of guess what's going on underneath, and then explore to see how their guesses are going, can help them get better at summarizing in turn. Okay, so that's it for this talk. I think, we have these 3 different kinds of management that I'm talking about that are parts of leadership. I think we need to really think about how, being a leader at a technical organization requires very similar skills, even though the day-to-day skills that we're developing with how do we build organizations versus how do we influence technology are different. There's a lot of high-level stuff that's the same and overlapping, and that we should focus on developing. And hopefully this framework of the 5 R's gives you something to think about how to foster that in your own organization. Thank you.